You're looking at a photograph from October 15th, 1902, taken outside the Blackwater Coal Works in Mill Haven Township, Pennsylvania. 17 children stand in neat rows, their faces solemn beneath cloth caps and worn wool coats. Their fathers worked the deepest shafts in the county, extracting anthracite from veins that ran 300 feet below ground. What you see is a simple portrait of mining families, commissioned by the Mill Haven Benevolent Society. What you don't see, what couldn't be seen until digital restoration began in 1998, is the pale face watching from inside the mine shaft window. No children were permitted underground at Blackwater. The mine's safety regulations, filed with the Pennsylvania Mining Commission, explicitly forbade anyone under 16 from entering the workings. Yet there he is, captured in silver halide and shadow, staring out from behind reinforced timber and glass. 3 weeks after this photograph was taken, the Blackwater mine suffered a catastrophic collapse. 43 men died in the disaster, including 12 of the fathers whose children posed outside. The cause, according to official reports, was a pocket of methane gas that ignited near the main shaft. But the investigation files, sealed for 60 years, tell a different story. They speak of strange sounds echoing from abandoned tunnels in the days before the collapse. They mention tools found in impossible locations and shifts that reported seeing lights moving in sealed chambers. Most disturbing of all, they record testimony from 3 separate witnesses who claimed to see a child's face at various windows throughout the mine, a face that belonged to no living boy in Mill Haven Township. The original photograph was donated to the Mill Haven Historical Society in 1954 by Clara Pemberton, daughter of mine foreman Thomas Pemberton. She included a handwritten note that read, "Father never spoke of what happened at Blackwater, but he kept this picture locked in his desk until the day he died. He would stare at it for hours, counting the children over and over. He always said there were too many faces in that picture." When archivists first examined the photograph under magnification, they dismissed the anomaly as a processing flaw. Silver nitrate plates from that era were notorious for double exposures and chemical artifacts. It wasn't until Professor Margaret Thornfield of the Eastwick Institute for Photographic Sciences applied spectral analysis in 1999 that the truth emerged. The face in the window wasn't a flaw. It was photographed at the exact same moment as the children standing outside. The depth of field, light exposure, and silver density all matched perfectly. Someone, or something, had been watching from within the mine when that shutter clicked. And according to mine records, every shaft and tunnel had been evacuated for the surface photograph. The building should have been empty, but it wasn't. What you're about to discover challenges everything we thought we knew about the Blackwater disaster, and raises questions that have haunted investigators for over a century. In 1902, Pennsylvania's coal industry employed over 180,000 workers, many of them immigrants seeking prosperity in America's growing industrial empire. Mining camps like Mill Haven Township sprang up around productive veins, creating insular communities where entire families depended on a single employer. The Blackwater Coal Works, established in 1887 by the Mill Haven Mining Consortium, was considered a model operation. Electric lighting had been installed in the main shafts in 1900, replacing dangerous open flames. Safety inspections were conducted monthly by certified engineers from the Pennsylvania Bureau of Mines. Worker housing included running water and indoor privies, luxuries that attracted skilled miners from across the region. The company physician, Dr. Nathaniel Holloway, maintained meticulous health records for all employees and their families. His ledger, discovered in the basement of Mill Haven General Hospital in 1987, provides a detailed census of the mining community. Every child in the township is accounted for by name, age, and family residence. Cross-referenced with school attendance records from the Mill Haven Primary School, the documentation appears complete and accurate. Yet none of these official sources can explain the additional face captured in the mine window. The parish register of St. Catherine's Church, where most mining families worshipped, contains birth and baptismal records dating to 1885. Father Michael O'Brien's careful script documents every child born in the township. His entries include not just names and dates, but detailed physical descriptions and family lineages. When compared against the restored photograph, every visible child outside the mine can be identified and verified. But the boy in the window remains anonymous. No birth record, no baptismal entry, no school enrollment, no medical examination. He exists only in that single moment, frozen behind glass and timber, 300 feet underground. Dr. Holloway's final entry, dated November 3rd, 1902, 2 days before the mine collapse, offers the first hint of something amiss. Treated young Samuel Morrison for severe anxiety, following recurring nightmares about the boy in the dark places. Child claims to have seen unfamiliar faces watching him from shadows throughout the mine during his father's shift changes. Prescribed chamomile tea and advised the family to limit the boy's exposure to mine premises. Note: Samuel was present during the October 15th photograph session. His description of the dark boy matches no child in our community records. 3 other children mentioned similar encounters in the weeks following the photograph. Each described a pale boy who watched them from places children weren't allowed to go. Inside mine buildings, behind locked doors, through windows of abandoned shafts. Always watching, never speaking, never moving when observed directly. The official explanation attributed these sightings to childhood imagination and the stress of living in an industrial community. But Dr. Holloway's private notes suggest he found the consistency of their descriptions troubling. He had begun planning a formal inquiry when the mine collapsed on November 5th. His body was found in the medical station, where he had been treating injured workers. The inquiry died with him. At 6:47 a.m. on October 15th, 1902, photographer William Ashford arrived at the Blackwater mine to document the mining families for the Benevolent Society's annual report. The morning was crisp and clear, with visibility excellent under overcast skies. Ashford used a Fulmer and Schwing 8x10 plate camera mounted on a mahogany tripod, standard equipment for commercial portraiture of the era. His glass plates were prepared with fresh silver bromide emulsion, mixed according to the Anthony Company's published formula. The exposure time for the group photograph was calculated at 4 seconds, accounting for the subdued natural light and the need to capture 17 children clearly. Mine Superintendent James Crawford personally oversaw the evacuation of all underground workers for the photography session. His shift log, preserved in the Mill Haven Historical Society archives, shows the last miner emerging from the main shaft at 6:32 a.m. The all-clear signal was given at 6:40 a.m., 7 minutes before Ashford began positioning his subjects. Crawford noted, "Building secured and vacant per company protocol for surface documentation." Yet when the photograph was developed 3 days later in Ashford's downtown studio, the anomaly was immediately visible. Thomas Pemberton, the mine foreman who commissioned the portrait, examined the original plate under magnification. His handwritten assessment, found tucked inside the photograph's original frame, reads, "Face clearly present in shaft window during exposure. Appears to be juvenile male, age approximately 10 to 12 years. No such individual was authorized on mine property during photography session. Recommend investigation by company security, but no investigation was conducted." Crawford's official response, documented in a memorandum dated October 20th, 1902, dismissed the anomaly as a photographic artifact of no operational significance. He ordered all copies of the photograph to be distributed as planned, with no mention of the unexplained presence. Ashford himself grew increasingly disturbed by his work. His business ledger contains multiple references to the Blackwater negative in the weeks following the session. On October 28th, he wrote, "Third examination of plate confirms presence of human subject in mine window. Subject exhibits clear facial features, clothing consistent with period dress. Impossible to explain as double exposure or chemical flaw. Client refuses further discussion of matter." On November 1st, just 4 days before the mine collapse, Ashford made his final entry regarding the photograph. "Strange dreams persist about the boy in the darkness. He watches from shadows, neither moving nor speaking when addressed. Clara Morrison visited today, asking if I had photographed her brother inside the mine. I informed her no children were permitted underground during the session. She became agitated and left without explanation. The Morrison family had lost their eldest son, Peter, to scarlet fever 6 months earlier. He had been 11 years old, with pale hair and deep-set eyes. According to his death certificate, he was buried in St. Catherine's Cemetery on April 18, 1902. His grave marker remains visible today, weathered but legible. Yet Clara Morrison's description of the face in the photograph matched her deceased brother exactly. Following the mine collapse of November 5, 1902, the Blackwater photograph became the subject of intense scrutiny by investigators from the Pennsylvania Bureau of Mines. Chief Inspector Robert Kellerman arrived in Millhaven Township on November 8 to conduct the official inquiry into the disaster. His preliminary report noted several irregularities in the mine safety protocols, but it was his private correspondence that revealed deeper concerns. In a letter to Bureau Director Charles Whitman, dated November 15, 1902, Kellerman wrote, "The photographic evidence suggests the presence of an unauthorized individual within the mine structure. This discovery raises questions about security procedures and possible criminal negligence. Recommend immediate consultation with photographic experts to verify authenticity of the image." The Bureau commissioned Professor Edmund Fitzgerald of the Philadelphia Institute of Technology to examine the original glass plate. Fitzgerald, recognized as Pennsylvania's leading authority on photographic forensics, possessed specialized equipment for detecting manipulation and fraud. His analysis, completed on December 3, 1902, confirmed the image's authenticity beyond any reasonable doubt. The silver halide crystals show no evidence of tampering, overlay, or chemical alteration, Fitzgerald reported. The exposure density and grain structure are consistent throughout the entire plate. The subject visible in the mine window was photographed simultaneously with all other elements in the composition. This is not a double exposure, nor is it the result of processing errors. Dr. Helena Blackwood, a consulting physician from the University of Pennsylvania Medical School, was brought in to analyze the physiological aspects of the mysterious figure. Her expertise in comparative anatomy and forensic medicine made her uniquely qualified to assess the anomaly. Blackwood's report, filed January 12, 1903, contained disturbing observations about the boy's appearance. The facial structure exhibits characteristics consistent with severe malnutrition and possible oxygen deprivation, she noted. The skin appears unnaturally pale, suggesting limited exposure to sunlight over an extended period. Most troubling are the eyes, which display a peculiar reflective quality not present in normal human subjects. The overall presentation suggests an individual who has spent considerable time in subterranean conditions. A third expert, Professor Marcus Thornwell, of the Geological Survey of Pennsylvania, examined the structural context of the sighting. His analysis of the mine's blueprint revealed that the window where the boy appeared led to a sealed chamber that had been abandoned since 1899. The shaft beyond this window collapsed during excavation 3 years prior to the photograph, Thornwell reported. The chamber was filled with debris and sealed according to standard safety protocols. No human access to this area has been possible since the closure. Yet the photographic evidence clearly showed someone or something watching from behind that very window. The investigators reached 3 possible conclusions, none of them satisfactory. Either the mine's security records were falsified, the photographic experts were mistaken, or something impossible had occurred at Blackwater. The official report, published in March 1903, attributed the mine collapse to natural gas accumulation and made no mention of the photograph. The anomaly was classified as unresolved due to insufficient evidence. The case was quietly closed, and all investigative materials were sealed by order of the state mining authority. They would remain locked away for nearly 6 decades, gathering dust in forgotten file cabinets while questions festered unanswered. 3 distinct theories emerged from the sealed investigation files, each attempting to explain the inexplicable presence captured in the Blackwater photograph. The first, favored by mine officials and company representatives, proposed a prosaic solution: fraudulent documentation and security lapses. This theory suggested that Mine Superintendent Crawford had falsified his evacuation logs to conceal unauthorized personnel in the building. Supporting evidence included Crawford's swift dismissal of the photographic anomaly and his refusal to cooperate with extended questioning. Additionally, payroll records showed several discrepancies in worker attendance during the weeks preceding the photograph. However, this explanation failed to account for the sealed chamber where the boy appeared, a location that had been physically inaccessible for 3 years. Moreover, independent verification of the evacuation came from Shift Supervisor Michael O'Donnell, whose testimony was considered reliable by all investigators. The second theory, advanced by Inspector Kellerman, centered on criminal activity and deliberate concealment. Kellerman suspected that unauthorized mining operations were being conducted in abandoned sections of Blackwater. Child labor violations were common in Pennsylvania's coal industry, despite official prohibitions against underground employment of miners. The theory gained credibility from reports of strange noises and unexplained lights in sealed areas of the mine. Local residents had complained of mechanical sounds emanating from supposedly vacant shafts during nighttime hours. However, physical examination of the sealed chambers revealed no evidence of recent excavation or human activity. The debris fill remained undisturbed, and air quality measurements detected no signs of recent occupation. The third theory, whispered among investigators but never officially documented, suggested something far more disturbing. Dr. Blackwood's medical assessment had noted the boy's apparent adaptation to subterranean conditions. His pale complexion and reflective eyes suggested prolonged underground habitation, possibly extending over months or years. Combined with the inaccessible location of his appearance, some investigators began to consider supernatural explanations. Local folklore spoke of tunnel children, spirits of young miners who had died in cave-ins and continued to haunt active workings. The Morrison family's identification of the figure as their deceased son Peter added weight to these paranormal theories. Several miners reported encounters with childlike figures in the weeks before the collapse, always in areas where living children couldn't go. Each theory found both support and contradiction in the available evidence. The security breach theory couldn't explain the sealed chamber access. The criminal activity theory couldn't account for the lack of physical evidence. The supernatural theory couldn't satisfy scientific scrutiny or official documentation requirements. As winter settled over Millhaven Township in early 1903, investigators found themselves facing an impossible puzzle. The photographic evidence was genuine. The witness testimony was consistent, but no rational explanation could reconcile all the facts. The boy in the window remained as mysterious as the day William Ashford captured his image on silver-coated glass. And in the darkness of abandoned mine shafts throughout Pennsylvania, other photographs would soon reveal similar anomalies. The Blackwater case was not unique. It was the beginning of a pattern that defied understanding. At 3:17 a.m. on November 5, 1902, night watchman Patrick McBride was making his final rounds when the earth beneath the Blackwater mine began to shudder. The tremor lasted only seconds, but it was followed by a sound McBride would later describe as the mountain's death rattle. The temperature in the main building dropped noticeably, and the electric lights flickered in uneven patterns before failing completely. McBride lit his oil lantern and moved toward the main shaft to investigate, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. The wooden floors creaked under unusual stress, as if the entire structure was shifting on its foundation. When he reached the central monitoring station, McBride discovered that the pressure gauges were spinning wildly. Methane levels, normally stable in the sealed mine, showed readings that exceeded the instrument's maximum capacity. The ventilation fans, designed to operate continuously, had stopped turning despite showing electrical current flow. Most disturbing of all, McBride reported hearing voices coming from deep within the mine. Children's voices, calling out in languages he couldn't understand. At 3:23 a.m., the first support beam snapped in the eastern tunnel, 200 feet below ground. McBride attempted to activate the emergency alarm system, but the mechanisms had seized in their housings. The telegraph lines to town had been severed by falling debris, cutting off all communication with rescue services. As the collapse accelerated, McBride made a decision that saved his life. He abandoned his post and ran for the surface exit. Behind him, the mine's interior began to fold inward, like a house of cards in slow motion. The main shaft, nearly 400 feet deep, filled with debris in less than 10 minutes. Secondary tunnels and support chambers followed in rapid succession, creating an underground avalanche that registered on seismographs as far away as Pittsburgh. When rescue teams finally arrived at dawn, they found the surface buildings intact, but the underground workings completely destroyed. 43 men were trapped below, including the night shift workers who had been performing routine maintenance on the lower levels. Recovery efforts continued for 6 weeks, but only 12 bodies were ever found. The remaining 31 miners were presumed crushed beyond recognition or buried too deep for excavation. McBride's final report to the Mining Commission included one detail that was never made public. As he fled the collapsing mine, He claimed to see pale faces watching from windows throughout the building. Not the faces of trapped workers, but children's faces. Dozens of them, pressed against glass from chambers that should have been empty. They watched him run with expressions of neither fear nor curiosity, but something approaching satisfaction. The last thing McBride remembered before reaching safety was a child's laughter echoing through the darkness behind him. When investigators asked him to describe the voices he had heard before the collapse, McBride could only repeat one phrase. They were calling out names, he said, the names of the men who died. The Blackwater mine disaster officially ended mining operations in Millhaven Township, but it marked the beginning of a different kind of investigation. Throughout the winter of 1902 to 1903, similar photographic anomalies began surfacing at mining sites across Pennsylvania. The Clearwater Coal Works reported childlike figures appearing in company photographs taken near sealed mine entrances. The Riverside Mining Consortium discovered unexplained faces in architectural documentation of their newest facilities. Each case followed the same pattern: group photographs revealing unauthorized children in impossible locations. By spring of 1903, the Pennsylvania Bureau of Mines had quietly assembled what they called the Anomalous Documentation Committee. Led by Inspector Kellerman and Professor Fitzgerald, the committee investigated 17 separate incidents across 6 counties. Their classified report, completed in September 1903, documented consistent characteristics among all the mysterious figures. All appeared to be children, between the ages of 8 and 14, predominantly male, with notably pale complexions and unusually reflective eyes. All were photographed in areas that had been verified as empty during the exposure sessions. All appeared in mining-related facilities that had histories of underground fatalities or structural collapses. The committee's final recommendation was to suspend all photographic documentation at active mining sites. This policy remained in effect until 1923, creating a 20-year gap in the visual record of Pennsylvania's coal industry. The original Blackwater photograph was transferred to the State Archives in Harrisburg, where it was filed under Industrial Accidents, Unresolved Cases. Access was restricted to authorized researchers and mining safety officials only. Clara Pemberton inherited her father's copy when he died in 1934, but she kept it locked away until donating it to the Millhaven Historical Society decades later. The mine site itself was purchased by the township in 1910 and converted into a memorial park for the disaster victims. A granite monument lists the names of all 43 men who died, but visitors often report seeing additional names that seem to appear and disappear on the stone surface. In 1962, exactly 60 years after the photograph was taken, urban explorer David Chen discovered a way into the sealed underground chambers. His photographs of the abandoned workings, published in Pennsylvania Mining Quarterly, showed extensive damage from the 1902 collapse. But they also showed something else: fresh footprints in 60-year-old coal dust, sized for a child's bare feet. The footprints led to the exact location where the window boy had been photographed, then simply ended. Chen reported that his camera equipment malfunctioned repeatedly in the underground chambers, producing images with unexplained dark figures in the background. He abandoned his exploration after 3 visits, citing an overwhelming sense of being watched by unseen observers. The Millhaven Historical Society reopened public access to the Blackwater photograph in 1998 as part of their centennial mining exhibition. Digital restoration revealed details that had been invisible in earlier examinations, including what appeared to be multiple faces behind the primary window figure. Experts count anywhere from 3 to 7 additional children, visible in the enhanced images, all watching from different locations within the supposedly empty mine. Modern analysis has confirmed every aspect of the original 1902 investigation. The photograph is authentic, the mine was documented as empty, and the children remain unidentified. Computer enhancement and spectral analysis have only deepened the mystery, revealing layers of presence that seem to exist between the visible and invisible worlds. The faces in the photograph continue to watch, frozen in silver and shadow, waiting for questions that may never be answered. In 1976, construction workers renovating the basement of Millhaven General Hospital made a discovery that would reignite interest in the Blackwater mystery. Behind a false wall in the building's oldest section, they found Dr. Nathaniel Holloway's personal archives, sealed since his death in the mine collapse. Among his papers was a leather-bound journal detailing his private investigations into what he termed spectral manifestations among the mining families. The journal revealed that Holloway had been secretly documenting unexplained encounters for over 2 years before the disaster. His entries describe a pattern of sightings that extended far beyond the few cases mentioned in his official medical records. Children throughout Millhaven Township reported seeing pale figures watching them from impossible locations, inside locked buildings, behind boarded windows, within sealed mine shafts. Holloway's investigation had led him to conclude that these manifestations were connected to the mine's history of fatal accidents. He had identified correlations between sighting locations and sites where workers had died in previous cave-ins or gas explosions. Most significantly, his journal contained detailed sketches of the apparitions based on witness descriptions. The drawings matched the face captured in the Blackwater photograph with uncanny precision. Holloway's final entry, dated November 4, 1902, 1 day before the mine collapse, contained a chilling revelation. "The manifestations are increasing in frequency and intensity," he wrote. "Multiple witnesses now report seeing entire groups of pale children gathering near the mine entrances after dark. They appear to be waiting for something or someone. I fear their presence may herald a catastrophic event. The children of Millhaven speak of dreams where the pale ones call to them, inviting them to come below and play forever. Several families have reported their children sleepwalking toward the mine during the night hours. I have prescribed sedatives, but the problem persists. Tomorrow, I intend to confront Superintendent Crawford about implementing emergency safety measures. The mine must be evacuated until we understand what forces are at work beneath the earth." The journal also contained correspondence with other physicians across Pennsylvania's coal regions. Dr. Marcus Webb of Coaldale reported similar phenomena at the Lehigh Valley mines. Dr. Sarah Blackthorne of Shamokin documented cases of tunnel fever, a condition where children became obsessed with entering underground spaces. Dr. James Whitmore of Pottsville described an epidemic of nightmares among mining families, all featuring pale children beckoning from dark places. The letters revealed a network of medical professionals who had been quietly tracking what they believed was a widespread supernatural infestation. They theorized that the intensive mining operations had disturbed something ancient and malevolent deep within the earth. Their correspondence ended abruptly in November 1902, coinciding with a series of mining disasters that claimed the lives of several investigating physicians. The surviving documents were scattered across multiple archives and forgotten, until Holloway's journal provided the connecting thread. Modern researchers have since assembled what they call the Holloway Files, a comprehensive collection of evidence documenting supernatural activity in Pennsylvania's coal regions. The files suggest that the Blackwater photograph was merely one visible manifestation of a phenomenon that had been building for years. The pale children captured on film represented something far older and more dangerous than anyone had imagined. They were not simply spirits of the dead, but harbingers of disasters yet to come. And according to Holloway's final calculations, their appearances followed a predictable cycle. A cycle that, if his mathematics were correct, was approaching its next peak in the early decades of the 21st century. The rediscovery of Dr. Holloway's journal prompted a new investigation by the Pennsylvania Geological Survey in 1977. Led by Dr. Catherine Morrison, descendant of the family that had lost young Peter Morrison in 1902, the team used ground-penetrating radar to map the collapsed Blackwater mine. Their survey revealed an extensive network of natural caverns beneath the official mine workings, chambers that predated any human excavation by thousands of years. More disturbing still, the caverns showed signs of recent disturbance despite being supposedly inaccessible since the 1902 collapse. Air samples extracted through deep core drilling detected traces of methane and carbon dioxide that suggested ongoing biological activity. The gas composition was inconsistent with normal geological processes containing organic compounds that typically indicated the presence of living organisms. Dr. Morrison's team also discovered acoustic anomalies within the sealed chambers. Sensitive microphones lowered into the drill holes recorded sounds that resembled human voices, particularly children's voices, echoing through the underground spaces. Spectral analysis of the recordings revealed speech patterns in multiple languages, including some that linguistics experts could not identify. The voices seemed to be calling out names, the same names carved on the memorial monument above ground. In 1983, the investigation took a personal turn when Dr. Morrison began experiencing the same recurring dreams that had plagued her ancestors. She described visions of pale children standing in underground chambers, beckoning her to join them in their eternal watch. The dreams intensified until she could no longer distinguish between sleeping and waking encounters with the apparitions. Her research notes from this period show increasing obsession with what she termed the debt beneath the earth. Morrison theorized that the mining operations had disturbed an ancient covenant between the surface world and something that dwelled in the deep caverns. The pale children were guardians of this pact, collecting souls to maintain a supernatural equilibrium that human activity had disrupted. Each mining disaster, each life lost underground, represented a payment toward this cosmic debt. But the ledger was never balanced. The underground watchers always demanded more. Morrison's investigation was abruptly terminated in December 1983, when she disappeared during a solo expedition to the sealed mine site. Her equipment was found at the memorial monument, but she was never seen again. Security cameras installed after her disappearance captured inexplicable footage of lights moving through the underground chambers on the anniversary of her vanishing. The lights appeared to be searching for something, following patterns that matched the original mine tunnel layouts. Local authorities sealed all access points to the underground areas and classified the site as permanently hazardous. But the sealing couldn't contain what had been awakened by decades of investigation. Reports of pale children sightings spread beyond Millhaven Township, appearing at mining sites throughout Pennsylvania, where similar disasters had occurred. Each location showed the same pattern: unexplained photographs, recurring dreams among descendants of victims, and evidence of ongoing activity in sealed underground spaces. The Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Resources quietly established Protocol 847 in 1987, a classified response procedure for anomalous geological manifestations. The protocol required immediate containment of any site where mining-related supernatural activity was reported. Over 40 locations across the state were subsequently designated as restricted zones under environmental protection pretenses. The true reason for their closure remained buried in classified files, accessible only to select government officials. Dr. Morrison's final research notes found in her abandoned office contained a disturbing prediction. She calculated that the supernatural activity followed a generational cycle tied to the lifespans of mining disaster survivors. As the last witnesses to the original tragedies passed away, the restraints holding the pale children would weaken. Her calculations suggested a critical threshold would be reached sometime in the early 21st century. When that moment arrived, the watchers would no longer be content to observe from behind glass and shadow. They would emerge to collect the debt that had been accumulating for over a century. The countdown had already begun. By 1995, the classification of mining sites under Protocol 847 had attracted the attention of federal agencies investigating unexplained phenomena. The Department of Energy's Paranormal Containment Division, operating under deep classified status, assumed oversight of the Pennsylvania mining anomalies. Agent Rebecca Chen, a specialist in supernatural archaeology, was assigned to conduct a comprehensive review of all related incidents. Her investigation revealed that the pale children phenomenon extended far beyond Pennsylvania's borders. Similar manifestations had been documented at mining sites across Appalachia, the American Southwest, and industrial regions of Europe. Each outbreak followed the same pattern: intensive extraction operations, worker fatalities, and subsequent appearances of ghostly children in impossible locations. The phenomenon appeared to be a global response to humanity's increasingly aggressive exploitation of subterranean resources. Aiden Chen's report, declassified in 2019, following a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit, contained startling conclusions about the nature of the manifestations. The entities observed in mining-related incidents display characteristics consistent with interdimensional guardians rather than traditional hauntings, she wrote. Their appearances correlate with specific mathematical patterns related to extraction volumes and worker mortality rates. Evidence suggests they represent an ancient protective mechanism designed to limit human access to certain underground regions. The pale children are not spirits of the dead, but sentinels guarding something of immense importance, buried deep within the earth. Chen's investigation had led her to abandoned military records from the 1950s, when atomic testing in Nevada had inadvertently broken through into similar underground cavern systems. The test sites had been hastily abandoned after researchers encountered hostile entities that matched descriptions of the mining pale children. Classified footage from those operations showed childlike figures emerging from blast-created fissures, seemingly unaffected by radiation levels that should have been instantly fatal. The entities had demonstrated intelligence and coordination, working together to seal the breaches created by the nuclear explosions. Military personnel who encountered them reported lasting psychological effects, including compulsive dreams about underground spaces and an overwhelming urge to return to the test sites. Several soldiers had disappeared during subsequent expeditions to study the phenomena. Their bodies never recovered despite extensive searches. The atomic testing program was quietly relocated to other regions, and the Nevada sites were classified as permanently off-limits. Agent Chen discovered that similar incidents had occurred at mining operations worldwide, always resulting in immediate closure and government classification. The pattern suggested a coordinated global response to contain something that posed a threat to human civilization itself. Her investigation reached a turning point in 1997 when deep seismic monitoring detected synchronized activity at mining sites across multiple continents. The pale children were no longer isolated manifestations. They were communicating with each other across vast distances. Ground-penetrating radar revealed that the natural cavern systems beneath different mining sites were connected by previously unknown geological formations. What researchers had assumed were separate incidents were actually coordinated responses by a single, distributed intelligence. The entity network extended through underground passages that spanned entire continents, with nodes located beneath every major mining disaster site. Chen's final report recommended immediate implementation of global mining restrictions and continuous monitoring of all underground extraction operations. Her superiors classified the report at the highest security levels and transferred Chen to a desk assignment investigating UFO sightings in rural Montana. The truth about the pale children was deemed too dangerous for public disclosure. But Chen had made copies of her research before the classification order came down. She anonymously leaked selected documents to paranormal researchers and mining safety advocates, ensuring that the information would survive in fragmentary form. The leaked materials provided crucial context for understanding the Blackwater photograph and its connection to a phenomenon of global significance. The pale boy watching from the mine window was not an isolated ghost, but a member of an ancient network awakening after centuries of dormancy. And humanity's expanding industrial civilization had finally pushed them past the threshold of tolerance. The time for passive observation was ending. In 2003, exactly 101 years after the Blackwater photograph was taken, mining engineer David Ashford, great-grandson of photographer William Ashford, inherited his ancestors' complete archive of negatives and documentation. Among the materials was William Ashford's private diary, which had never been examined by previous investigators. The diary revealed that the Blackwater photograph was not Ashford's first encounter with supernatural phenomena at mining sites. Between 1899 and 1902, he had documented similar anomalies at 7 different locations across Pennsylvania's coal regions. Each photograph showed pale children in impossible locations, always appearing in areas that had been verified as empty during the exposure sessions. William Ashford had been secretly commissioned by an organization called the Industrial Safety Documentation Society, a group that modern researchers have been unable to verify ever existed. The Society's letters, preserved in Ashford's files, indicated they were systematically documenting supernatural activity at mining sites for purposes that were never clearly explained. Their correspondence suggested they possessed advanced knowledge of where and when the manifestations would occur. The final letter from the Society, dated October 10, 1902, 5 days before the Blackwater photograph, contained an ominous warning. "The convergence approaches," it read. "Document what you observe, but do not attempt intervention. The children are gathering for a purpose that extends beyond human understanding. Your photographs will serve as testimony to events that history will struggle to comprehend. After November 5th, discontinue all mining site documentation and destroy these communications." David Ashford's analysis of his great-grandfather's photographic plates using modern digital enhancement techniques revealed details that had been invisible to early 20th century investigators. The pale children captured in multiple photographs were not different individuals, but the same entities appearing at different locations over time. Facial recognition software confirmed matches across 7 separate mining sites, suggesting the manifestations were capable of rapid transportation between distant locations. More disturbing still, enhancement of the Blackwater photograph revealed that the primary figure in the mine window was not alone. Dozens of additional faces could be detected in the shadows behind him, creating a crowd of watchers that extended deep into the supposedly collapsed mine shaft. The children appeared to be organized in ranks, with the window figure serving as a sentinel for a much larger gathering. Digital analysis also uncovered previously invisible text carved into the mine window frame. The words, etched in a script that linguistics experts identified as a mixture of ancient Celtic and Proto-Germanic languages, translated roughly to, "The debt comes due." Carbon dating of wood samples from the mine frame indicated the carving had been made decades before the mine's construction, suggesting the text predated any human activity at the site. The implications were staggering. The pale children had been waiting at Blackwater long before the first shovel broke ground. David Ashford's research attracted the attention of Dr. Elena Santos, a folklore anthropologist specializing in industrial age supernatural phenomena. Together they mapped the locations of all documented pale children sightings against geological surveys of underground cavern systems. The correlation was precise. Every manifestation occurred directly above natural cave networks that extended far deeper than any human excavation. Ground-penetrating radar surveys commissioned by Ashford and Santos revealed that these cavern systems formed geometric patterns when viewed from above. The patterns resembled massive symbols or glyphs carved into the earth itself, with mining sites serving as focal points in a design of continental scope. The discovery suggested that human mining operations had been unconsciously following a predetermined pattern, guided by forces that had been manipulating industrial development for over a century. The pale children were not responding to mining activity. They were directing it toward specific locations for reasons that remained incomprehensible. Ashford and Santos published their findings in the Journal of Anomalous Phenomena in 2005. But the article was retracted within weeks, following pressure from unnamed government agencies. Both researchers received visits from federal agents, warning them to cease their investigation and surrender all related materials. David Ashford complied with the demands, but not before scanning all documents and uploading encrypted copies to secure servers in multiple countries. Dr. Santos disappeared in 2006 while conducting fieldwork at an abandoned mining site in West Virginia. Her research notes, found in her hotel room, indicated she had discovered evidence that the Pale Children Network was preparing for what she termed the final manifestation. The notes suggested that the centennial anniversary of major mining disasters would trigger coordinated activity across all affected sites. 2002 had marked the 100-year anniversary of Blackwater, and similar anniversaries were approaching for dozens of other mining tragedies. Santos believed the Pale Children were timing their emergence to coincide with these commemorative dates, when the psychic resonance of past disasters would be strongest. Her final entry warned that humanity had perhaps a decade before the network completed whatever purpose had guided its activities for over a century. After that, the relationship between surface civilization and the underground watchers would change forever. Today, the restored Blackwater photograph hangs in the Millhaven Historical Society, displayed behind protective glass in a climate-controlled case. But visitors who examine it closely report that the image appears to change depending on the viewing angle and lighting conditions, Museum director Sarah Whitfield has documented over 300 reports of visitors seeing different numbers of children in the mine windows. Some count 3 figures, others see 7, and a disturbing number claim to see dozens of pale faces crowded behind the glass. Disclaimer: the story you just watched is fictional. It explores themes of history, mystery, and the unexplained. This narrative aims to provoke curiosity, inspire wonder, and remind us that some truths defy simple explanations.